to the DMF. I am your host, Justin Yance. This is episode 98, and this is the last episode of the old format in some ways. I finished this episode a while ago, but when Dorian Gray happened, I had to put everything on hold. So this is older stuff that I had filmed or recorded, and so I'm giving you the last little bit that I had. This was done probably in May, and actually it was done in June, believe it or not. This was done in June, and so I'm going to talk about, in this episode, I'm going to talk about acting, what it was like for me to get this role of Dorian Gray, and I talk about the film Django Unchained and Calvin Candie. I have made a decision no longer to talk about politics, and yeah, that's about it. So I want to say thank you for listening, and enjoy, and stay tuned. So I finished Midsummer Night's Dream. That was interesting. As I have said, I felt a little handicapped because some of my lines were taken away, so some of the paradox of the character that I would bring out in certain lines was taken away, but I was able to deliver it well. One actress told me that I'm the only Demetrius she's ever met that wasn't insufferable, meaning didn't just get stuck up into the character. Now, I'm somebody who, stays away when the performance is about to begin. I like to get my distance because I really want to concentrate all my energy on the performance. So I don't want to talk. I'm like really just focusing in on that. And I really enjoyed playing Demetrius. I learned a lot. I was able to do it. On the last night, it was raining, so they actually had to bring us into a church. And that was cool because we, didn't have to deal with, nature. As I've said before, there were bugs, I would fall, bugs would come on me, there would be rocks I'd be falling onto, and I didn't have to deal with any of that because we were just in, we were inside. And it was nice to be able to do that, but I was able to do both. I got to have my whole family come one night. That was really cool. And now, something miraculous has happened. Something I always foresaw kind of happening in some ways is now I am Dorian Gray. I was going to play Basil Hallworth, but circumstances out of my control have led to me now being Dorian. Now, this is great, but this is also a large task. So now I've got to go and, learn a whole new character. And pretty much, now I'm front and center. But I welcome the challenge, and I know I can do it. But it's going to take a lot because there's a lot of language. And the trick with this part is really getting the language to a point where it just flows freely. The external is very much there. Now I've got to really bring into the internal. And when I say external, I mean like the flowing of the language, the going up and down, what you kind of hear on the outside. And then there's the internal, what is the character feeling? And that's the work here. And with Dorian, he has a whole nother palette because his whole thing is about vanity, but he's going on a journey. He kind of self-destructs. This is somebody who pretty much sells his soul for beauty, to remain young for the rest of his life, but then he loses the consequences of life. And that, just slowly begins a self-destruction in the man. And so there's a lot of work at just finding that tone that a character is, because I don't want this Dorian Gray to just be a voice, something that I just hear. That he sounds good. I want you to feel what he's feeling, and I want you to just get lost in it. And it's going to take a lot of work. It's going to take a lot of research, and it's going to be even harder than what I had with Basil Hallworth, because now I'm in every single scene. But I welcome the challenge. I've always felt I should play Dorian Gray. this is one of my favorite roles, and this has been a dream. This is a dream role, and now I have it, and I have the opportunity to show what I have, and I believe I can bring out one of the greatest versions of Dorian Gray ever, if not the greatest. So it's going to be a lot of work. I can't, there's no resting on my laurels. I was hoping to, kind of take a break, but no, it's straight back into it, figuring out exactly what it is, who he is, and what makes him tick. And that is very central to this character. And then bringing out the way he is in this time period, the way they spoke. They don't speak the way we spoke today. Not even England speaks like this anymore. No one really speaks this way. We don't look at language as a blade. I mean, when back in these times, you didn't have television or movies. You just had the word and then books. And so everything was strengthening the written word or the spoken word. So then you were able to just, you just had this repartee with your words that just could just hit things with precise accuracy, something we don't have now. So trying to find that is going to be very challenging. This is going to be a lot of work. It's just going to be going over the lines. What do these lines mean? What is he saying here? How do I bring that out? How do I get him from here to here? I'll use an example. If you look at the film, you look at the television show Breaking Bad, they had the idea of taking Mr. Chips, Goodbye Mr. Chips, into Scarface. Thinking this nice, innocent person to the most monstrous man you could think of. And that's kind of what they did. So it's going to be a lot of work. I keep saying that, but it just is. I mean, pretty much every minute now of my thinking must be pretty much preoccupied with playing Dorian Gray, playing this character, and how he thinks. I'm going to begin writing in a journal my thoughts as him, how he sees things. So a lot of work. I've got my work cut out for me. But that's about it. I hopefully I can get back to reading books again and, getting, that. But, the job called. I had to put all my time into that. It's a lot of work. I haven't even been able to meditate the way I like to. I usually like to meditate for like 2 hours. Sometimes it's just now 15 minutes, 20 minutes. But that can happen when you get busy. So it's just, balancing out things. I've been reading about different techniques that I can use. One thing is called time boxing, which is kind of making a schedule. But, let me see, where is it? Yeah, time boxing. It's where you block out time and you only do that thing so that you're not just wasting time. You're just sitting there watching Netflix. And I think that's going to be very necessary for this play and for things upcoming, because I have a feeling I'm just going to continue to get more and more busy, and this is where it is and just have to deal with that. So that's where I am now. And when we come back, I'm going to talk about the film Django Unchained in a different way. So let's talk about Django Unchained. Now, this is a film I've seen many times, and I kind of came to revisit it on Showtime. Now, if you don't know, it's directed by Quentin Tarantino. It stars Jamie Foxx, Samuel L. Jackson, Leonardo DiCaprio, Christoph Waltz, Kerry Washington, James Remar. Who else? Don Johnson is in it. Not Don Johnston. That's a joke. That's a Broken Flowers joke. His character's named Don Johnston. And everybody laughs when he says it. He says Johnston, not Johnson. um, Little side note there. But anyways, I wanted to look at this movie from a different aspect. This really doesn't have a necessary score. This is more of a soundtrack. But let's talk a little bit about Django Unchained. I wanted to look at it from a different point of view. Instead of me giving you a synopsis of the whole movie, I'm going to give you my take on a certain character. And we're going to talk about Leonardo DiCaprio's character, Calvin Candie, who's one of my favorite characters Quentin's ever done. Funny thing, this is the only character Quentin Tarantino said he grew to despise. So you can take that as you will. But so Leonardo DiCaprio plays the role of Calvin Candie, and he is the plantation owner who we find, spoilers, I mean, this movie's been out since 2013 or 2012. But, I'm giving you that warning. He has Calvin Candie as Broomhilda, who is played by Kerry Washington. And that's kind of what leads Jamie Foxx's character, Django Freeman, and Dr. Schultz. Dr. Schultz, that's a little wrestling term there. Dr. King Schultz. But he would be Dr. Schultz. Not Dr. D. Schultz, the person who slapped the reporter Eric Stossel, the professional wrestler, when he asked him if it was fake. So he slapped him across the face, and it didn't end too well for him, as he was thrown under the bus and he was pretty much released from his contract. But this is not about wrestling. This is about Calvin Candie. So Schultz and Freeman are on their way to Greenville when they find out that they need to get to Jigsaw County. And there they find the plantation owner, Calvin Candie, and he's into what they call in the film Mandingo fighting, which is basically another term for, I don't know if it's a racial slur. I mean, I would never call anyone a mandingo. I would say that's racial, but that's what they called it. So it's basically just slave versus slave, and that's kind of how they kind of get, as Schultz is saying that he needs, he wants to buy a slave so that he can partake in the action. Now, what I find fascinating about this Calvin Candie is he's like, he wants to be referred to as Monsieur Candie, even though he doesn't speak French. So he's kind of like that Louisiana type character that wants to, be seen as, I am the royal man here, when he really has nothing to do with French or anything, but it's kind of just all a front. Now, Samuel Jackson plays basically the servant, the head of the house. And he's basically maintained that Calvin stay, the plantation owner. He's kind of like the brains of it. Samuel L. Jackson actually said it in an interview that he's the Dick Cheney of the group to his George W. Bush. And that's kind of a good way to put it. It's interesting because Calvin Candie, he gets into that phrenology and the forensics, the idea that inside the brain there is something that leads a black person to lean towards submissiveness. I mean, it's quite baloney, but it's that's something that they did believe in those times. I don't know, there may be something to that, but I don't think one race tends to be to the other. But I think this is how they, they looked at, this is how they, acknowledged slavery as, I can't, the words just escaped me. How they, justified slavery in their own head. is that, oh, it's in their brain, you know. But this is a fascinating game. Leo has never really played a villain other than Louis XIV in The Man in the Iron Mask, and he also played the other side. Here, he's just playing the strict villain, and he is very good at it. And this is what I've always wanted. I remember hearing the premise that, you know, that Christoph Waltz and Jamie Foxx were going to be bounty hunters against Leonardo DiCaprio's plantation owner. I was like, wow, what what a premise for something. I mean, so just out there that, like, wow, that's where we're going with this. I was just, you know, floored. But let's take a look at the Calvin Candie character. You know, he has this opulence to him, you know, very regal look. You know, the burgundy, you know, dark suits, you know, he's always impeccably dressed. Even when, you know, they're riding out into the country, you know, he's got his, you know, riding clothes on, he's got his hat. So he's always dressed well. But he's somebody that, you know, if you upset him, he will not only kill you, but your entire family. And we see that as the film goes on. But one of the things I thought would be interesting to look at is how this kind of came to be about. Now, he was born into the plantation thing, but he was, you know, he had to have been surrounded by a lot of, you know, black people, you know, who, you know, pretty much kind of raised him. I think Samuel Jackson's character very much helped raise. I mean, he loves Calvin. Spoiler: when Calvin is killed, he looks at it as if a son died. That was his son in some ways. He's like the Alfred in some ways too, because he loves Calvin. I thought this was such an interesting character, and I wanted more. I mean, he gets killed. He comes in the middle, like toward the middle of the end of the movie, and then he's gone. And then the movie changes almost villains and characters. But he's such an interesting character. I wanted more. I wanted more of him. I wanted more of it. Like, if there was a character that I wanted to see Quentin Tarantino go back on, it would be, you know, can you write a novel about Calvin? Because Calvin seems like such an interest. I mean, he's got the cigarettes, but with the long stem. You know, this is somebody. This is a character we don't see in Tarantino's films. I mean, we have characters, not quite like this. This is such an interesting character, and he's taking such an interesting time period. Another character in the movie, I'm, you know, drifting off topic here a little bit, is Bruce Dern's character. We just see for like a split 20 seconds at most, as he pretty much tells us how Django ended up here. But the way he tells these lines, and the camera's just straight on his face, as he's basically saying, you are doomed forever, and you will never get out of this. I would have liked a little more backstory on him. I forget what the plantation was called, but Garuba Plantation, I think it is. I mean, it begins at the very beginning of the movie, but Calvin Candie is such an interesting character. We got Mogi, Mr. Mogi, who is, you know, kind of like his lawyer. And he, yeah, he's his lawyer. So he's got all these little, you know, characters there. And, you know, he's got, you know, the women, the black women that, you know, it's not implied or even touched on, but it's somewhat a little implied that, you know, he's slept with some of these women. You know, he's very much somebody who is taking in the decadence of the life and enjoys who he is. I just found it to be such an interesting film. After Calvin is dead, I kind of, you know, zone out a little bit. I'm like, okay, I know where this film's going. But with Calvin, he was just such a, you know, first we kind of see him as this dumb character, and then, you know, Stephen, there we go, I just remembered it. Stephen, Samuel Jackson's character, pretty much tells him, you know, they're playing you for a fool. They don't want a slave. They want the girl. And he kind of comes back, and he gives his idea about phrenology. And then he brings out his guys. They've got him at gunpoint, and he screams, and he brings out Broomhilda. And it's a funny thing humorous, to say the least. When he did this, when he shot this scene, he cut his hand, and I think Quentin loved it so much they kept it in the movie. Then this point where he like spreads the blood on her face. I don't think that's real blood. I don't think he would do that. But I do think in that first take he did cut his hand. They just decided to go with it, and then they added that in there. And then he, threatens to kill Broomhilda. It's a really cool film, and I just love the Calvin Candie character. It's just such an interesting. Him and the Colonel Hans Landa. I mean, these two characters. These might be some of my favorite. That and Bill. Of the villains of I like Ordell as well. And so Ordell, Robbie, Bill. You don't have a last name. Colonel Hans Landa, and Calvin Candie. Those are probably my favorite villains Quentin's ever come up with. And I just love, and I want more. I'm going to be honest with you. I want more of Calvin Candie. So I kind of want you to just explore his character. I could have just given you another synopsis on the movie, but I don't want to do that. I want to do something different here, and I really love that character. I mean, I remember watching it, years ago and being like, wow, this is so good. I mean, I thought this was the movie he should have won an Academy Award for. But Christoph Waltz ended up winning his second Academy Award for this, for his portrayal of Dr. King Schultz, the supposed dentist. But yeah, I wanted more of Calvin Candie. Please give us some more backstory on who he is. Give me some more on what he's done. I always like that. When I see a character that's so interesting and I want more about him, I got that with Drive. Albert Brooks's character. I mean, I want more. Tell me more about that character. And they never do. So that's all I really have to say about Django Unchained. I really love Leo DiCaprio's performance, and I want more backstory on that character. And if I ever meet him, maybe I'll talk to him about that. And with that, when we come back, I'm going to talk about Batman, the animated series. I'm going to talk about another favorite episode. Or, well, not necessarily my favorite episode, but a very, very good episode, nonetheless. So, stay tuned. This last bit I am finishing up right now. So I'm going to put like a little ending to it. Normally I would have gone into a couple of other things, but I chose not to do those things, so those things don't exist. So I want to say thank you for listening. As always, you can find me at Justin Yance. And this is going to be a short episode because I filmed this and I wasn't able to finish it, and things have changed and the format's changed and it's different, and I don't want to go into politics anymore, and it would be ridiculous for me to look up things that happened on June 11th, 2021. So this will be the end of this episode. So it's a short episode, but I want to say once again, thank you for listening. And I will see you next time on the DMF